Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Collins, the Vice President of Film and TV at SESAC. Welcome to part 2 of SESAC Score's 22-second review. This is a continuation of our review of audio and video clips submitted earlier this month. Today's program is part of an initiative started by Christoph Beck and SESAC to promote diversity in film scoring. We do workshops like this and have a grant program to help fund scores created by underrepresented composers. You can find out more about our grant program by going to cesacscores.org and clicking on Apply for Grants. I'll put the link in the chat. The video of this session will be posted afterwards on YouTube. Just look for the SESAC channel and it'll pop up, the same with our previous session. Once again, some disclaimers. We had about 300 submissions in total, so we still might not get through everyone. So apologies for that. If you did not follow directions and named your file incorrectly, or uploaded the wrong file format, or submitted more than one audio, we will not be playing your track. Also, for the video submissions, the quality of the clips will only look as good as Zoom can make it, but the sound's okay, so we'll just muddle through. Lastly, the chat is open for comments. Please be kind. Without further ado, I'm happy to welcome everyone's favorite, many people's favorite composer agent, Richard Kraft.
I was under the impression I was everyone's favorite.
Well, most people.
Okay, we'll take it. So this is a historic moment in time. It is the 22nd day of the second month in the year 2022. It is mind-boggling, and how it lines up with what we're trying to achieve, which is to see how composers can make the best impression on a demo in 22 seconds. And the reason it's 22 seconds is completely arbitrary, but it sort of fits into the basic amount of time a person who's trying to listen would actually give to a piece of music. And let's keep in mind, you may have written the greatest score of all time. That does not mean it's good on a demo. So a demo is a commercial to try to get someone to be interested in knowing more about you. Just like a trailer for a movie is not the movie, it is a way to get people to want to watch the movie. And it's a very short amount of time that a trailer has versus a film. So this is a study in a few things. One is how to capture people's attention in a short amount of time. It is a study in, and this is really important because most people don't get the opportunity to hear back to back to back to back to back, repeat the word back multiple times, pieces of music. And I think it'll give everyone a sense of what stands out and what doesn't stand out and what you remember 10 minutes later, yet alone 10 hours later. And so I listen to lots of music because clients write music and I help them make playlists to try to get them jobs. And almost always the stuff they think should be submitted isn't really the right idea because they're thinking, oh, this is complex and it's so musically challenging, or they remember how well it worked in the film. And I'm putting it together as a listener. And I'm not the only person who listens to a lot of music. We have some other fine folks here. We're going to start with Christoph Beck, who is lovely. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Richard.
And he has written music in every genre, which I think is an important thing. I met him. He was a guy doing television with Buffy. And you were also doing your first movies, things like Big Fat Liar. And what's relevant is, A, it's why you caught the attention of myself and other people. But Big Fat Liar, who directed it?
Sean Levy.
And look what has become of him. And you did Bring It On. And what happened to him?
Right. Peyton Reed went on to direct the Ant-Man movies, and Sean went on to direct a ton of movies, I think 7 or 8 of which I have scored.
And so Ant-Man was not the same genre as Big Fat Liar or Bring It On.
Right.
And it was several years passed, decades passed,
Yep.
but the impression you made early on in your career on a movie that is nothing to do with a Marvel film made him want to work with you. And so one of the things that I discovered last time we did this is, Chris, you listen to music differently of other composers. Why do you even listen to other people's music, and what are you looking for?
You know, before I answer that, I just want to hop on what you talked about today being a historic day and a historic time that we started. A friend of mine is into numerology, not really my thing, but she pointed out that today is historic because the number 2 is a number of partnership and collaboration, and that is such a big part of what we do. You know, one person to another person, and it also is when you iterate that over multiple people, it becomes community, and that's an important part of what we do as well. But to get to your question, I have done a couple of these now with you guys, and I am always surprised at how non-composers listen to music and what they respond to versus what I respond to. I could hear a piece of music and hear, for example, a particular electronic element that might be a synth sound that piques my interest. And for me, it's like, oh, that is a cool synth sound I've never heard before. I wonder how they did that. What instruments did they use? What techniques did they use to get that? But sometimes as a composer, I lose the forest for the trees, and I forget that actually the emotional impact, the storytelling component to it is really the most important thing to pay attention to when you're putting together a demo and trying to get the attention of a listener. So that has been very instructive for me, actually, to really try to place myself out of the brain of a composer and into someone who's just a music fan or someone who's a storyteller.
And I read yesterday in Vanity Fair that there is a theory that film music is not just written, performed, mixed by one human. There's a team of people involved in film music. And as a person leading a team, what reasons would you listen to other composers? Why do you care there are other composers?
Well, I do have a team, and that has worked very, very well for me and the people I work with for a long time. And I look for people on my team who have, first of all, really great technical chops and good production skills. Notwithstanding everything I just said about putting together a demo for filmmakers, if you find yourself as a young composer putting together some material for another composer that you might be wanting to work with, that would be a bit of a different approach. And you want to showcase maybe that's when you can indulge in focusing on the more musical aspects, featuring music that maybe is a little bit more sophisticated, layered, and knowing that, if you do end up working with another composer, that composer, he or she, will take the time to work with you in the terms of the part of the job that is the storytelling part, that is the part that really needs the music to be simple and doesn't always need to be a demonstration of chops. But as a composer hiring another composer, if I hear chops, that's impressive to me. It's good to know that is part of the toolbox.
Yes. And speaking of chops, that is the worst segue. There is no good segue except for I like lamb chops. So both the food and the sock puppet lamb chop, dated reference, and Tracy McKnight. There was no way to get that over to you. So we're just going to jump in and explain to our audience why we are so blessed to have you today, because you have worn so many hats in the film music space. You have been a music supervisor on multiple films. You have been the head of a music department with Lionsgate. So you've been an executive. You've run a soundtrack label. And the movies you tend to work on are the entire spectrum, lots of big budget films, a lot of documentaries, a lot of art films. And one of the things people don't really get is they think a music supervisor just picks songs for a movie, but what role do you play in the world of composers?
Well, thank you for that introduction. I'll take the chops. That we have this unique role where I always feel like I get to sort of be the head of the music department, and I get to be the ambassador. So I get to work with a director to make sure that we're making all of their visions the whole musical vision come true, which is not only songs, but definitely score, which we're going to talk about today. And my job is to extract that information from my director and then reach out and start to put together a short list of composers that meet the criteria, not only for imagination and skill and talent, but also there is a certain amount, and I think Christophe can talk about this as well, about matchmaking, about personalities, and getting to to make sure that you're branching all things to have the best experience. So my job is to actually go out and put forth the ideas, unless there's a pre-existing relationship, and then help to navigate that process.
Excellent. And then we have Tracy Lehman, who we remember from our last time as the director of Ghosted, the thing that people have been scoring. And she had Rob Minkoff killed and has taken his place as our filmmaker to comment on audio clips. So besides the death of an important filmmaker, as a person who puts together teams to work on projects, how do people reach you? How do you plow through their work? Could you elaborate a bit on that?
I meet a lot of, well, all department heads. I end up meeting a lot through friends or through film festivals. I see a project in a block and I'm like, wow, that's really great. I love that music, or I love that art. Who's the production designer of that? And then you end up just staying friends and following each other, and until you find a project that is right to start and try, and hopefully the goal is always to continue. It's not one project. For me, it's like, I want to find my people, just like Chris was saying, he worked with people six or seven times. That's the goal, so finding people that you get along with, especially a composer and editor, because you're going to be alone with them a lot. So, you want to be able to be alone in the room and joke around, even in tough times and things like that.
Well, speaking of joking around in tough times, we are about to brave a pile of music that we're going to listen to the first 22 seconds. Now, I have not heard this music. You guys haven't heard this music. A lovely man in Nashville is hitting the start button who has randomly picked. We have over 300 submissions. So let's hear a randomly chosen one, and we will enjoy it for 22 seconds. Okay, I'll jump in. It was, to me, it said, hi, I'm grand and important, and I have a lot of sounds going on, and I will never remember I've heard this piece, because there was not a defining specific characteristic to it. It's just a type of music without any particular flavor of anything I'm going to remember. What about you guys?
Yeah, I agree. If you're going to do a really traditional, we talked a lot last time about the amount of submissions we got that were, in the Marvel action adventure box, or in this case, this is more of a sort of mainstream, dramatic, hopeful type of thing, but it's very, very traditional, very orchestral. If you're going to do something like that, then it needs something that's really distinctive, maybe an amazing melody, which is really hard to get across in 22 seconds. And this piece doesn't quite manage to do that. Yeah, I'm with you, Richard. I could easily see it getting lost in the sea of submissions.
And Tracy McKnight.
I felt the same way, and also I saw that there was something called gratitude on the top. I don't know if that was a key word there, but that's not what came through with the piece of music. But I also felt like it kind of jumped right in and didn't move me in a way that I felt like correlated, if that makes sense.
And
That's a great point, Tracy, actually. Sorry to interrupt, Richard.
Yeah.
Titles. We didn't even get into this last time, but track titles, I think, are a missed opportunity for composers to show a little personality. You know, titles can be witty, they could be fun, and it also is an opportunity to show a bit of storytelling acumen. I think, Tracy, that's a really amazing observation that this title didn't quite seem to line up with the emotion that's being conveyed in the piece. And I could imagine that would be like just a little bit of a red flag for a filmmaker who doesn't quite understand the connection between the title and the piece. And for God's sake, composers, don't submit a piece and just call it chase music. Or
Right.
If you want I love Michael Giacchino soundtrack albums, because there's so many incredibly punny things he does with the titles, and it evokes something, and it evokes a lot of Michael Giacchino's personality to get started with. Plus, I'm going to remember that track much better than one called Main Title.
I have to jump in right here. Sorry. We asked them to pick one word to name the track.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it was a great catalyst to
Yes.
have a conversation about naming tracks, but that they were not supposed to do more than give a generic one word or less than generic one word. They got to pick the word. And let's move on to another clip. Audio.
I love this. I can this piece does something that is very hard to do, which is come up with a high concept, in this case, car sounds, and execute it in such a way that the essence of that concept really comes through in the music in 22 seconds. I don't think this piece is particularly musical, but I would be very curious to see with the rest of the piece how it develops. I'm not even suggesting that we do that now, but I'm just saying, as a demo piece, as something that's hooky, as something that grabs attention, I would say kudos to the composer.
And Tracy Lehman, what were your thoughts?
Well, I love that. I love the uniqueness of that last one. I definitely haven't heard anything like that. And I would definitely want to see where it goes to. I feel like something's about to happen, you know.
It's like it starts off and I'm just like, oh, that just sounds like a car when you leave the door open. I'm like, oh, that's the point, you know?
Yeah. Could we actually, before Tracy McKnight comments, can we listen to another 20 seconds of that? Because my concern is it's not going anywhere, but maybe I'm wrong. And Tracy McKnight, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree. I mean, I think, you know, A for effort of standing out and being able to create, like, to actually pull us into these different sounds and the horns, and I loved it. Although I have to say, after hearing the second part of it, I wish that it did have a crescendo or a build or a punctuation mark, or maybe something that could have, there was an opportunity there to to really kind of bring us through to a musical point of view, which I think it kind of just then sort of sustained out.
Yeah, and I agree. I was really intrigued, and it became a bit of diminishing returns for me. If this is going to be the one piece at the top of your demo that you submit, you want to make sure you certainly got us sitting it up and going, that's interesting, but then make sure we get to another place. And speaking of other places, we're about to listen to our third audio, and then we're going to watch a video clip. Okay, and don't take this too hard, but that sounded like a parody of coming up this week on fantasy, on some 1980s story about a kid who overcomes the odds. And it's just very dated and not in a charming retro way. It's just dated and kind of chirpy in a TV movie sort of way. But besides that, what did others think?
I mean, my take on it is pretty much the same. I think it's really well executed. I think it's well put together, but there's nothing about it that is special or current. I also got the feeling that it was a little dated.
I'll agree. I feel like, you know, I feel like I've heard it before, you know, and that, like, to me, when I'm looking for personality and originality, it kind of blend, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
When I'm listening to these, I'm trying to just visualize something, you know, anything, like, what is it telling me? What's the story here? And all I got from that is clouds parting. Like, that's all I got. I was like, okay, I can see some clouds parting, but I don't really know any, like, I wish some of these committed to telling some kind of story a little bit, you know?
Okay, well, we are about to jump into the pool of the movie Ghosted, and we're going to first watch it without the score, with no music, what the composers who stepped up and did this challenge, what they were looking at. Now, they were given a brief, which was, it described the tone of the project as Tim Burton, Wes Anderson, and Woody Allen, that incredibly weird intersection. And you gave sort of the log line of the movie. And what was that?
It's a woman with a lot of baggage falls in love with a man haunted by his past. And she literally carries around a lot of baggage, and he's literally followed by the ghost of his ex. And in this scene, the ghost of his ex is trying to break through. She doesn't like that the new love is living there. She's trying to break through and get her attention.
And that would look something like this.
But there was still more baggage.
Okay, now we are going to see what a random submission for storing that cue would be. Or not. So, one of the things I like so much about that clip, by the way, is the way within one continuous shot the people moved in and out of it. There were surprises. The performance of the lead actress, there's a lot of expression to play off of. And I love the narrator's voice. It just really established the kind of movie I'm in based on that delivery of his line. And while we're stalling for time, Tracy, what else could you tell us about this clip or what you're looking for musically?
That was a Texas switch up, that shot. It's my first time getting to do that, which is a lot in horror films, or a lot used in stunts, a lot where the stunt double will run around, you know. But what I'm looking for is, she's in this whimsical world. Her point of view is that she's in love. She's, you know, the hormones of love, everything's great. And this presence of the ghost kind of has to creep in. You know, when she looks back, I really want them to be like, did I just hear something, or was something there? You know, when you walk like a shadow of something, and then the nightmare, the reality, you know, when there's a red flag you've painted green, and you're like, oh shoot, the end of the scene is red flag, like it's there, you can't ignore it anymore, you know. So we're getting from whimsical world to the reality in that scene.
And are we ready to run the clip? If so, just there we go.
But there was still more baggage.
Well, I actually like love that style a lot, you know. It's great music. I don't know, because it's both whimsical and sort of dark, it doesn't really go from one to the other necessarily in that piece, but I just love the music. So I think that person's clearly skilled, and we could talk about it, you know.
Excellent. And let's see what a different person did with that.
But there was still more baggage.
Wow, I jumped at my own movie. It's been a while since I did that. Can I go ahead? I'm just that one was kind of too much, you know, like I just wanted a hint of that other world, and then so you don't have to hit it like so obviously, you know, when you see the ghost, if that makes sense. But
Well, third time, here we go.
But there was still more baggage.
I keep jumping. That's a good thing. So with this one, I like that I wish they could have seen the whole movie. And this person is more along the lines with the whole movie. The magical world, the whimsical world, the beginning. I definitely would take down that big hit when we see the ghost, because I don't think we need that. But I jumped again, which at the end of it, so it's great. So I really like that one.
I like that one a lot too. And now we are going to go back into the world of music only. There will be just music to listen to. So Tracy McKnight.
You know, that didn't really move me, to be honest. I felt like it just, it didn't, and tonally, I felt like it was just kind of meandering on, and I didn't really feel like it was bringing me into the mood that I think it was trying to establish. It was like a C.
And Tracy Lehman.
that I like the world of that one. I got the visual of a club, a smoky club or something like that. And I was like, okay, it could be that, or it could be like a, you know, World War II kind of, like I was just trying to get the visuals of that, right? What the scene was set. But then it didn't go anywhere, you know, it just set the mood and the tone and then just left me there, you know.
And Chris?
Yeah. To me, I hear a kid fresh out of school who studied a lot of jazz who wants to show me how cool the chords are. I think there's a real lack of attention and awareness of what type of music stylistically is in movies these days. I would say if this is how you're going to market yourself as a composer, you are severely limiting the number of projects that you would be considered for. I can count on one finger the amount of movies or TV shows I've seen in the last decade that might have music like this in it. And I'm thinking of Crazy Rich Asians, which like had a big sort of very traditional old school big band score. I'm sure there's others I haven't seen, but man, I would recommend to this composer, regardless of how musical it is, how amazing it is, even if Tracy was moved, even if Tracy McKnight was moved by it, even if Tracy Lehman could think of a particular scene that it would go in, like pay attention to what music is being bought in movies and television today, and work from that context as a way to stand out, and work within that style and find ways to distinguish yourself in that context rather than just go so old-fashioned.
And my thoughts are a few things. One is this reminded me of going to a school music program where they play music, and I'm flipping through my program because I'm so disinterested in what's going on musically on stage. And to Chris's point, I'm currently in Palm Springs for Modernism Week, which is a celebration of mid-century modern. And one of my favorite artists is the artist Shag. Now, if you're going to be doing retro style stuff, I think it's a great idea, but it better be the new interpretation of it and incredibly heightened. It's sort of like, it's very clever. When Danny Elfman did Pee-wee's Big Adventure, he was referencing Bernard Herrmann and Nino Rota, two people that nobody was referencing at that time, but he did it Elfman-esque, which became his interpretation of it. And it was hyper caffeinated versions of both of them. And it made it startling that we hadn't heard music like that for so long. So I'm actually a fan of people who tackle old styles, but you better be doing it fresh. And I wouldn't have liked that piece of music in any piece of time. I say cruelly. I'm sorry. Let's move on. Maybe I can be nice next.
Wow.
Tracy McKnight.
So that was epic. And I think that's the name of the title as well. I felt like there was a lot going on in a short period of time, and also moving into the chanting, which personally I feel like, to me, if you're going down that road as a composer, that better be spectacular, because it's been done so many times in exactly that type of genre of, I was thinking of gladiators, like you run down the field with their sword. But I felt like that could have used a little more spice for me.
And Chris?
Totally agree with everything Tracy McKnight just said. I would only say, no matter how great your introduction is, and this one was pretty good, knowing specifically that this workshop that we're doing is 22 seconds oriented, and also knowing that that is typical of low attention spans of people who have to listen to tons of this music all the time. You know, get to the meat of it quicker. The epic part, which seems to be like the point of this piece, we only got to hear a few seconds of it before it got cut off. And you're selling yourself short by going, you know, 20 seconds with an intro instead of 10 or even 5.
And Tracy Lehman?
I love the cyclical build of that one. You know, I felt like it was going to go somewhere, and then a lot of these, it feels like we're going to go somewhere and then we don't. You know, and I'm sure that has to do with the 22-second thing. But again, if, like Chris said, if you only have that amount of time, take me somewhere. Let me know you can tell a story or make me feel something. That's all I want. You know.
Yep.
And probably, if I'm making a list of things I don't want to hear, epic, because there's so few things that are epic and good, and they're done by masters of the field, and they're done with incredible resources to execute them. And epic projects tend to hire more established composers. And so it's sort of like a smorgasbord of things going against it before it's even started. And unless you've got a way to do epic different than everybody else and everything that sounds like every video game, it's so stridently epic, and the real masters aren't. It's like they're tuneful, there's gradations, to me, it's sort of like there's a generation that grew up going, I want to be doing those big movies. And it's like, I'd rather just hear you do something with some personality of your own. And that's what this next piece might be like. Tracy Lehman, you get to kick it off.
I like that one. I don't know what the story is at all. You know, I don't have any idea, but I felt like the composer was trying to say something, and I want to know more. I want to know what the story is. I know it doesn't really go anywhere in that bit, but I did feel like they were trying to express some emotion, and so it felt authentic, you know.
And Tracy McKnight. Well, I think it should be a little more.
I like that. I'm going to give A for effort, and of course, you know, now I'm matching the titles with the music, and I do feel that was somewhat patriotic, and I bought into it. So I think good job.
And Chris?
It didn't really work as well for me as for the Tracys. It felt a little bit cliche. I feel the same about this piece, and I feel about so many of the others that present a very traditional orchestral type of concept. If you're going to do that, just make sure that there's something in it, an amazing tune, an amazing, surprising harmony. And I didn't really get that. And I just want to take this opportunity to point out that, you know, notwithstanding that this piece did work for the Tracys in this case, and I'm curious to see if it worked for you too.
I love it. Thank you. We work into the Tuesdays.
Oh yeah.
Notwithstanding that, I just want to point out to everyone on this call that the single piece that was most arresting in terms of getting attention was the one that was most left field, the one that was least conventional and least traditional, the one that took a lot of risks. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I felt this took no risks and wasn't specific about, and for some reason, I'm starting to hear stuff that sounds like 1980s TV movies, which are kind of sincere, but not masterful in their sincerity. They're just sort of like Hallmark, not the old Hallmark, not the love story ones they do now, but sort of like the treacly, feel good, return to the country kind of Hallmark. Anyway, we're going to now listen to one more piece of music and then get back over to the Ghost. Tracy Lehman.
I'm not seeing the track titles. I don't know where those are coming, but I don't know what track title was, but I felt like I was on a journey with that one. Like someone had a mission, they were on a journey. And so at least it was conveying that to me, and that's something, you know, and I like the style, but that's about it.
And Chris?
I liked how it was a little bit different from a lot of the stuff we've been hearing. I was especially impressed at how, and Tracy Lehman just put it, that she felt she was taken on a journey. The amazing thing about it is that in 22 seconds, you feel like you're taken on a journey that actually has a beginning, middle, and an end. We didn't just hear the beginning of the longer piece here. We hear an actually like effective piece in 22 seconds that is challenging to do. So, you know, and maybe you don't want to actually put a 22-second long piece on your demo. Maybe you want a longer piece where the first 22 seconds really grabs attention. But nevertheless, I noticed that about this piece that I haven't about any of the others. And if I could just speak directly to the composer of this piece, if you get a chance, borrow, beg, or steal or beg for a favor of a guitar player to replace that guitar in the front part. It sounds sampled. Maybe it isn't, but it sounds sampled to me. And I think if you had the personality and depth that a live player can bring, it will make the piece that much more effective, especially as a lead-off track.
And what about you, Tracy McKnight?
It's getting confusing, those Tracys.
Yes.
No, I concur with my fellow panelists. I do feel like that this was very well executed. I felt like it did have a beginning, middle, and an end. And it made me feel something in a short period of time, and I like that. So I'll talk to that composer too and say, well done.
Yes. And for me, oh my God, it had a tune. It goes da ba ba da ba da 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 ba da 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 da, repeat ba 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 da 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 da. Oh my God, that was something. There was something to hold on to enjoy. It painted a picture. It showed that the composer writes melodies that have a twinkle to them. I did remember that one. And we are now, if I'm not mistaken, oh, yes, we are going to the world of Ghosted.
But there was still more baggage.
That one did everything I want to be done in this, but I feel, and it was well done, and I worked. It literally did everything I wanted, but it sort of feels like we can take more risks with this piece. That's kind of, it's a little traditional, like in some ways, like that. But I do like it. I tried to go so big with the style in this one and do some weird genre blending things, and that piece didn't really blend any of that, you know.
And you made an interesting point before we started this today, which is, so this would be the equivalent of you giving notes to a composer. What do you want people to do with the words you say?
So I don't speak, you know, I'm not a trained musician, you know, I love film music, but I may not know the lingo for everything. And so if if I'm speaking to a composer or any department head, if they can really try to hear the note behind the note or the intention of the note, that's really important, because if you just do exactly what I say, you'll end up with music that I would make, which wouldn't be very good. So I'm hiring the people that I'm hiring because they're good at what they do, you know, and together we're telling a story. So that person literally did exactly what I wanted, but it feels like they didn't bring enough of themselves or enough of the genre to it, different genres. So I'm trusting people, you know, you don't have to do exactly what I say. And I think that might confuse some people. I noticed in comments before that people were like, you know, but it's not my job to do your job. You know, I just need to tell you what I need, and then you execute it, you know, and then we'll talk. But I hope that makes sense. But
Yeah, I think whoever wrote that piece, based on what you just said, had a very good chance of coming up with version 2 that addresses what you're saying.
yes.
And let's watch another one.
But there was still more baggage.
I jumped again. That's so good. It's been like a really long time since I jumped like that. I would have turned down that wind sound or whatever that was, you know, it didn't need to be so obvious. But I really like the plucking or whatever that was. I like that this one was I really did like this one a lot. I like the world that kind of, I don't know, I just liked it. That's all I can say, you know, and I like the silence. You know, Chris was talking last time about how you can use silence and that when she passes and all that. I think this person did that really well, and they could have just, they could have depended less on that sound, that wind-like sound after.
So Tracy, Kitchen Tracy, which by the way, I did glance at some of the chat. You're getting compliments on the kitchen.
Really?
Yes, the word cute was used to describe it.
Okay.
Okay, so you work with directors like Tracy,
Uh-huh.
and you just have been hearing her talking and responding to music.
Yeah.
What might you think about what to present? Two things. What might you present her with for batch 2 of music? And if you're going to play middleman between her and the composer, what kind of notes, knowing a little bit more about Tracy, might you give?
Well, I would tell you that for the first one, now that we have a compare and contrast, if you will, and as I would brainstorm with my director, but I think there was some good foundation in the first one. It was very busy for me, and it felt like there was a lot of elements coming in that I found slightly distracting. Where I felt like the second one, it really pulled me in, and I felt like I felt a little more of the whimsy, and I really liked the fact that we didn't, that the scream at the end came more of a surprise as opposed to a punctuation mark for me. So it really makes the audience, and I would say that trust your audience. Also, that the audience doesn't need to have a piece of music telling them how to feel it at every particular second. And especially when you have horror movies or, you know, that tongue in cheek of how to do that balance. So I felt like I would probably want to sit and talk about number 2 a little bit more and seeing how we could build on that and where it would go.
And now we're going to watch one more video. And now that the person's in theory heard all these notes and completely rewrote the piece and sent it in and got it into the stack, here is a piece based entirely on these notes.
But there was still more baggage.
Found that one kind of confusing because it was like it was trying to do so many things that it maybe didn't do any of them, you know. I like the very beginning, but I kind of got lost. The music's overpowered. I stopped watching the video because there was so much going on with the music, you know.
Okay.
I would
Well,
just add to that
yes.
composer, if you just went to your drums track and hit that mute button and
Yeah.
play it again, I bet you would find that it leaves so much more space for the scene to play.
Very good. Well, we're going to mute the picture now and listen to just some pure music and give comment. So one of the things that I listen to, I can't help myself, is I identify in my mind what category of music it is, what genre it's in, or what composer style it's in. And in this particular case, for this to have been more effective for me, it needed like a lot, or if it's supposed to be driving, make it more driving. If it's supposed to have cool sounds, make them cooler. And it sounded like you were just about to get to a tune and the piece cut out right at the promise of a tune. What are your guys' thoughts?
Just to, I may be repeating myself a little bit here, but the thing that is good about this is that it is not orchestral piece number 45. But I totally agree with you, Richard, that there's not enough there to sustain interest. But you know, all composers out there listening, there's so many movies that are, especially comedies, that are looking for this more contemporary style. It's more, you know, it sounds a little bit dated to me, but we could call it like acoustic or alt rock type of style. There's just so many movies out there where they're looking for something that isn't orchestral, that would be more at home on the radio than in some soundtrack nerds collection.
I
And
agree.
speaking of soundtrack nerds, Trace, what do you think?
Me?
Yeah,
So,
either way.
I loved all the individual sounds. I like, you know, I was like, oh, that's neat. I wanted to like it. I wanted to get on board because like, that's unique. That's unique. But then it just didn't gel to kind of say anything, you know? And so that's all. I was like, I like the risk they took doing something unique, but it didn't go anywhere.
I felt like the guitar could have just shifted, you know, and maybe like added some momentum or picked it up a little bit and really gave it, I mean, not to go back to the titles, but it is called Angst. So for Angst, I want to feel, because I love having the titles because it gives me a reference point, but that's what I feel like it could have built and gone somewhere. But a good foundation, if I was working with this composer, I feel like we could give notes and it could progress into something.
Yes, and it's progressing into another audio clip. I will never remember that I heard that piece of music. Unfortunately, I won't. Will anyone else remember it?
Richard, you talked a lot about last time and a little bit this time too about this is a trailer.
Now we've all been upstage. This dog is so much better than anything that's going on. I'm going to remember the dog. Who is that dog?
This is Paco.
Oh.
He's a rescue. That was a great 4M33 suspense cue that probably worked great under some kind of scene where somebody's sneaking somewhere or somebody's hiding. As a piece on a demo, it is very unmemorable and I think just not effective as a selling tool.
And does either Tracy want to chime in?
No, I'm sorry, I'm gonna be title gal here, but that title was called Anger Ethnic. I don't know. That's just not, that needs to be reworked.
Yes. We've now probably listened to half a dozen pieces, and to me, I'm now at the, boy, something better pop out, because my mind's already drifting away from listening to composers' music. And so, and that is the unique assignment of a demo, is to cut through the tedium of listening to music, because no one picks their 38th choice to score their movie. They're usually going to get their first, second, third, fourth, and you better be up on the top of that stack, and stuff that nobody can remember is not going to get you to the top of the stack. And so let's listen to this next piece now that we're kind of brain mushed.
How'd that work for you, Richard?
To me, I may have even liked it. It had the potential of something I'd like, but the production of it, if you're going to do a charm piece, the performances and the sounds and the execution should really be charming and embrace its little circusy group thing, and give me the really A version of how that piece would be performed if it was really well performed. Because it was charming, but just not, there was no commitment in its execution.
To me, I got 80s wannabe Amblin vibes again.
This is the theme of our show today. The 80s are back. Tracy's, what did you think?
I think I could get why y'all are saying a lot of this stuff sounds a little dated. I do get, I think if the commitment you were talking about, if it were there, I would have felt something, and then I'd be along for the dated thing. Take me back. That's cool. But since it was lacking that, I want a composer who's really empathetic. Who can take me through a point of view of someone and can make me feel something even in 22 seconds. So that's probably my number one. And so, even if it sounds great, if I don't feel anything, then I don't know what it's doing,
I felt like it was pleasant.
Yeah.
It didn't hurt me and it didn't move me. It's just like, it was pleasant. Again,
I often equate this stuff to dating. Like, you go on a date, and if you go back to your friend and they go, "What was the date like?" and you go, "He was pleasant," that is the last date you're ever having with that person. And so let's go one more audio, and then we'll go back to Ghosted. Jump in, anyone.
This one felt a little bit almost like a foreign movie. I appreciated that about it, that it was just a little bit left of center in terms of the Hollywood mold for what we think of as film music. I appreciated that there was a unique point of view to it. Definitely piqued my curiosity.
Tracy McKnight.
I feel like I'm hearing it. It was an action cue again, and I feel like it took a bit for it to get into the action for me. So I think it's okay I wish it was a little bolder from the get-go. So I like to grab onto it and really feel that excitement. But I think as it built, it got a little bit better for me.
And for me, I put together a playlist, which I invite everyone to listen to the first 22 seconds of every track. I picked 50 tracks from established composers that are the kind of tracks that I would point to as great examples of 22 seconds. I took a long car ride with my wife and we listened to the first 22 seconds of everything on the playlist. And she didn't know what the movies were, who the composers were, but she had a strong opinion about everything because they elicited strong opinions. And you want something that is committed to what it's doing. And at least the composer thought it was the best version anyone could ever write of that. I'm not sure if that composer of the piece we just heard thinks they just wrote the greatest piece ever written for a suspense cue. It sounds like an assignment. They did it and they did it professionally enough. But where's the passion that you get, the confidence that the composer is so, they believe this is it. And everything on my playlist, that composer thought it was it. And now are we switching? I think we're switching back to Ghosted.
But there was still more baggage.
Jumping. I like every individual piece of that one. It sort of felt like it didn't all go together, but I liked, it was kind of busy up top. I started paying more attention to music than the visuals. Something's behind me, I hear something, or did I hear something that was there, which I really did want, but it just felt like it didn't quite all go together.
Well, let's see if the next person accomplishes that.
But there was still more baggage.
This is so different than so many of the ones I've gotten, and I really like that. It felt, Amelie was one of the references, so it felt like it had this kind of like a little Italian whimsical thing to it. It was slower, which was really interesting. I mean, I just like that they did something different, and I'd like to talk to that person and take another stab at it.
Excellent. Let's stab at the next one.
I just want to add before we jump into that next one, what works about this one for me uniquely among all the ones we've seen for Ghosted today is its simplicity, and that should be that should be instructive for composers who may, again, this is a situation where you're writing a piece specifically to be evaluated. So naturally, as a composer, you're going to want to show off. You're going to want to cram as much music into that 22 seconds as possible, which in the case of a demo, audio only might be a good approach, but in the case of scoring to picture, is most often not. I love this piece because of its simplicity. Knowing Tracy, I would imagine she might want a little bit of a less restrained approach on some of the actual moments that she would want highlighted, but there's totally a universe where that kind of really restrained approach where you just let the moments play without commenting on them would work very, very well for whoever is making the film as well. So I just want to say that. Good job.
Well, let's hear one more Ghosted.
But there was still more baggage.
that one just doesn't feel like, it feels like random, like it wasn't even to the picture, you know, and it wasn't whimsical either, you know, so.
Yeah, and if again, your clues are dropped. Wes Anderson, Tim Burton, Woody Allen would ignore directors' words at your own risk. And even though the music is different in all three of those directors' films, there's enough clues of what her taste is to try to address it. And now we're going to go back to audio.
And I will also say, sorry,
Oh.
Richard, to interrupt again. Even in the absence of clues directly from the filmmaker, your client, the person whose vision, your job it is to execute, you know, one, listen to the tone of that voiceover, Richard. You mentioned this earlier. You get that whimsy, you get that kind of fantasy aspect of it. And, you know, that should be a clue enough right there.
And one of the challenges of life is if you're writing a specific demo for a project, you frequently don't get to see the movie. You don't get to read the script. You have less than no obviousness to go by, and you're just making some educated guesses. I just had a composer who was up for the sequel to a movie he already did, and they didn't want him. And so I suggested, why don't you guess why they don't want you and try to address it? And it was a sequel. The original was made several years back. So I go, let's guess that they want something more contemporary in the approach. And let's guess they don't want what you already did, but maybe they want a little bit of it. And he was like, well, can I talk to the filmmakers? It's like, no, they've already chosen not to hire you. So, no, you're not going to be speaking to the filmmakers, but why don't you write something anyway? And he did. And he wrote a lovely letter that said, I have no entitlement to this project. As a matter of fact, it's probably to my detriment that I did the original movie. But if you have 5 minutes, I wrote a suite of what might be good for your movie. And it was all guesswork, and he just got the job. So it was like and what was great was, if he didn't get the job, he wasted a day of his life. And he tried. And he'd go, well, I threw my hat in the ring. And in this case, it caught. And it happens frequently enough that it was worth the gamble. But you don't always get a roadmap of what is needed. And if you are prolific, because all film composers are prolific, you have to be. Chris, how many minutes do you have to put out a day?
2 or 3.
Yeah. So if you live in a world that you make 2 or 3 minutes of music a day, it's a lot easier to throw out 2 or 3 minutes of demoing stuff and hoping it catches. And if not, you learn something about writing the music, you have more stuff for your library, and you can at least say, I tried, which I think is a very important thing to try. And we're going to try to listen to this next piece of music. Tracy's, what do you think?
I love it because of that sound, that weird sound, you know, it's like made it so special and unique. And if it weren't for that, I don't know what I would have thought, but that made it all come together for me.
Oh, I felt the exact opposite.
Oh, no.
Sorry, but I thought that was like, I was like, what is happening here? And is that the palette of the whole movie? So that is a very distinct choice to put into, and again, adventure. So I found that a little bit distracting.
And for
Yeah,
me,
Go ahead.
they're making a Goosebumps TV series. And if I worked with this composer, I'd say, hey, let's submit that, because that might be really good for that.
Hmm.
It's a swing for the fences. And when you go big on a bold idea, you're either going to get, a strong reaction, positive or negative, and here we got both. But I think as a composer, as a strategy for selling yourself, that is far preferable to being unmemorable.
Yes. We have a piece of music that can be referenced as the theremin piece. Just like there was the car piece of everything about kind of remembering, there's a thing that gives it a handle. And let us handle this next cue. Anyone?
I won't remember that at all.
Yep. And Tracy, other Tracy.
Same. I felt like I've heard it before. Sometimes I feel like when and Christoph mentioned this just for the previous cue. Sometimes I feel like when composers are putting a reel together, they write what they think you want to hear, as opposed to maybe that I'm just encouraging that distinction that we were just talking about, where we had a divided panel, but you heard something and you're like, oh, that got my attention. I feel like this just did not do that for me.
I would also just add that there's something about the production on this that sounds like it's a tiny orchestra that's trying to sound bigger. I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but there's something a little bit off-putting and very cheap about the way it sounds. And I would look at production on a piece like this as well. But I would say even this piece, really, really beautifully produced, might also leave a lot of listeners a little cold.
Yeah, and for me, one of the takeaways is write for your resource. If you do not have a 90-piece orchestra, don't write something that wants to live alongside Lord of the Rings, and do something like one of the best film scores ever written is for a movie, The Third Man, and it's entirely performed on a zither, and is 100% zither. It doesn't try to be another thing. It was written by a guy who knows what to do with a zither, and it's memorable decades later. So the overreach, if you don't have the muscle of an orchestra, don't write a big muscular orchestral piece, because we've all heard the A version of the execution of that kind of music. So words like cheap show up, but a string quartet played by a string quartet does not sound cheap. And then there's another thing to put through a filter. I refer to it as a pile of orchestration in search of a tune. So really, lots of people can get things orchestrated, but can you make it serve a purpose? And does it have a point of view? And are you telling a story different than every other epic video game thing? Because there's one more point. Every music library has that cue 1,000 times, and you can buy it for $250. So you don't need it. You don't need to have one created. But maybe we need this next one. So let's find out, and then we're going back to Ghosted. Can we air 20 more seconds of that? I'm curious. Tracy's?
I like this one a lot. I would want to work with this person, and because I don't know what the story is, I don't know what they're saying yet, but it's different and it's combining a lot of different things that sound really cool. Also, like, it feels like this person has an original voice as a composer. You know, a lot of these people, it seems like they're just doing the cool things they've heard, but it's like they put their own voice on it, you know, and I'd like to know what else they have too.
Me too. I thought this was well done. It also felt thematic, and it felt like it had a continuation. So I felt like that somebody was getting the story point across to me, and I just love the way it was executed. I thought it was really well done.
Chris?
Yeah, it's got personality. It has a somewhat unique point of view, stands out from all the rest of the stuff that we've been listening to today. It has what I would dare say is a bit of an infectious groove. Had my head bobbing a little bit.
Yeah.
I like, you make a good point. Head bobs are a good sign, and the rare, and you know you've hit a home run, hair standing up on arm. You cannot fake a hair standing on arm. And boy, when you write one of those pieces that you play it for people and their body reacts to it, you're on a good path. And let us do 3 more ghosteds.
But there was still more baggage.
Again, it did everything I wanted to do. It just felt like a little lack of genre blending, and kind of like I may have heard these before, but it did everything I wanted to do. So if I talked to this person, I'm sure we could make it a little more eccentric, you know, maybe.
I think for me, especially having heard something that was a little bit slower, I feel like sometimes the music is moving faster than the scene for me. And I was really liking the suspense of something that was moving a little bit slower. It really brought me in and into what was happening with the character, where I feel like this is feeling like it's telling me what to do, where the other one I was actually feeling more.
Yep. Tracy, let's watch another one.
But there was still more baggage.
That sad bit was interesting. I've never heard that before. Now I'm wanting silence and slow stuff. So what are y'all done?
Parlez-vous français?
When it's faster, it does have a redundancy. You know, I never saw it slower into that one composer. So I really kind of finding myself going back to that one piece that we liked, you know? So if they'd taken my notes and done exactly what I wanted, we'd have a lot of these, you know?
I love the sad bit there, because I think it does 2 things that are really good. One is that it brings forth the loneliness and sadness of this character. You know, she's pushing. You guys haven't seen the movie. I have, and I know that she's you know, she pushes away love when it's presented to her, and it's a very lonely existence, and that really brings up that shade of the character. And the other thing it does that's great is it really, because it sucks you in to her internal world, not necessarily in that specific moment, but her character as it relates to her entire arc. I think it really sets up the surprise of the ghost appearing when the camera moves over beautifully, because you're all of a sudden you forget that there was a ghost, and you're like, oh yeah, this character is actually pretty lonely and sad. Whoa, you know, it's a little bit like that. So like Tracy, You know, I've heard a lot of these, and that's the first one that's done that. And it's not saying that that's the way I would choose to do it or that Tracy would choose to do it, but it was a really great choice, I think.
Did anyone feel like it, like a carousel though? Like I had a little bit of a, I've like the carousel kind of going around for me a little bit. I don't, amusement park kind of feeling that kind of hit me.
In a good way or bad way?
Not a good way if I'm thinking about a carousel, you know, that kind of feeling. I felt like it was a little too much for me.
Mhm.
One
Well,
thing-
let's listen to one more and watch one more.
But there was still more baggage.
I think, was that a drum or what was that low sound? I definitely didn't want that, you know, because it's like, it's supposed to be like a whimsical thing and then something creeping in kind of like, or did you hear something? And that just felt like it was just like, let me tell you, everything's going to be bad right here. Let me just, you know, and then one thing I want to say about the sad one, the last one, I'm sorry, is that at least that composer was listening to what the person was feeling, you know, and so it gave me insight into like, okay, maybe I wouldn't do that exactly that way, but you're paying attention to the things I want you to pay attention to, so we can work together on that, you know. Sorry.
No, and we are going to listen to a few more instrumentals, non-visuals, and then we're all going to kind of chat about what we've learned on this journey together. Chris, you've worked on many movies in your career that have sequences that might be scored this way. What are some of your thoughts?
I think you said earlier, if you're going to do charm, really lean into it. And I think that's what happened here when we all popped back up on the screen. We were all smiling. So I would say strictly as a selling tool and as something to put on a demo, A+. And yes, I have scored a lot of movies this way. And there's a lot of movies I believe still being made that would look for music that just like this. So I would say, well done.
Yeah, and I would say on top of that, you have to write for movies that exist. And again, they're educated guesses. And I taught at USC for many years, their film scoring program. And I'd ask people, what movie do you wish you were scoring? And it was always big and loud and dramatic. And I go, who wants to score a comedy? Nobody raised their hand. Who wants to score a quirky little charm piece? Nobody raised their hand. It's like, you do know what movie, oh, who wants to score a horror movie? Nobody raised their hand. It's like, you do know these are movies. When we say scoring movies, these are the majority of movies that are existing, and most likely the ones to hire you at the beginning of your career.
Mm-hmm.
So I find a lot of composers who specialize in the early part of their career at doing comedy and doing it with personality, whether it's Chris Beck or Chris Leonard or Mark Mothersbaugh, or a lot of people who then branch off and do other types of things. Danny Elfman, Pee-wee's Big Adventure was the beginning. It's like, why does nobody want to score comedies and come up with a fresh way of doing it? And why so serious is part of my question. It's like, why are the choices almost always overblown?
Right.
What are your guys' thoughts on what the world needs now more of?
Ooh, that sounds
Besides
like a
love, sweet
song.
love.
So I took the but I mean, for my projects, and I feel like I do a lot of those 20 million and under kind of films, specialty amazingness, by the way, is that I think there's more adventure, there's more risk taking. I think that what Richard, you were just talking to is about finding that there's a lot of like guitar driven scores. Frankly, there's a lot of sounds that people are requesting, are that like The Social Network, for example, those kinds of Atticus and Trent Reznor, those types of feeling like that kind of angst with energy, with cool electronic sounds, kind of flavored with some orchestral elements that seem to be incredibly popular, or I'm being asked for that for not only documentaries, but for feature films. And I just want to say one thing about the last cue we just heard. That was one of the cues that I heard where it just grabbed me from the get-go, which I really liked. Like I was right in on the party line, and that was good.
And let
And
me
I would
ask,
just add too, like composers, what Tracy's referring to now, the first 5 seconds of that piece could not have been more simple. One note, an octave up, just and right away the simplicity and effectiveness of that pulls you in. So yet another lesson in simplicity and clarity of your focus as a composer.
yeah, in a way, I would forbid composers in the beginning of their career to using big orchestral sounds in their repertoire of synth sounds.
Right.
In other words, they don't exist. Just pretend like you're not allowed to use them. What do you got? What palette are you going to work with? And say that what your main objective for these demos is to write standalone music someone wants to listen to,
Right.
something that it's like you're likely to go, hey, come over here, honey, I want to play this thing for you. Not that it exists and it's fine, and it's probably the smaller version of a bigger thing. And I would look at Netflix and look at what shows exist and go, well, that's the catalog of kinds of things I'd be having the possibility of writing music for, and how many of them have giant, big, epic scores, and how many of them have other types of music. And what other parting words as we're wrapping this up is, Chris, if you could put a composer on your knee and whisper into their ear, let me tell you, lad, I'm about to pass on the wisdom of the ages, what would that be?
Okay, wow.
That was one dramatic scenario I just came up with.
Yeah, it was just, you
That
sure
was a
painted
good
a
one.
picture. Yeah. I would say find your voice. Don't fall into the trap of listening to the most popular, most blockbustery movie scores that are out there and copying that or doing your version of that. Or if you're going to do your version of that, do your version of that. And of course, besides that, the always tried and true, like, write every day. And part of developing your voice, especially as a young composer, is you have to let a certain amount of music move through you that might be a product of everything you've listened to your entire life before you get to the stuff that's really inside you. And writing every day helps all that move through and gets you closer to your voice.
And Tracy Lehman.
Well, one thing I loved about that last one is it sounded like the composer was having fun. Like the person had fun writing it, they had fun recording it. And that came through when I was listening to it. And so going along with your original voice, whatever that is, like, how do you do the music in your like all your influences, but your voice, just like with actors. What do you have to say? You know, and then I would say, what do we need more of in the world? I think we need more of that. We need more of people having fun, you know, we're disconnected, we're in Zoom, you know, we're doing all these things. And it's like, we can connect through this. Like you know, that we are all smiling and you can do that with any genre. Just let's enjoy what you're doing and then have that come through in your work.
Yeah, and for me, anytime your music could be described as something-esque, hopefully you-esque. Bernard Herrmann-esque was because Bernard Herrmann made that up. And
right.
Philip Glass-esque was because Philip Glass made that up. And Elfman-esque and Zimmer-esque. Strive to be an esque. Strive to do something that you believe is the shit. Like, not good enough, not passable, just have some conviction and swing very big, as Chris said, for the fences. Because if you don't, we're just not, I mean, we've now devoted 2.5 hours, 3 hours, 3.5 hours, I think, to listening. And we haven't even made a dent into the submissions. And we're all kind of brains. I know my brain is guacamole right now. And it would take a lot for me to hear something that was like going to stay with me, because I'm reaching the saturation point. And I assume if you're making a movie, your life is not devoted just to finding the music for it. There are probably other elements to making a movie than the music. And there's a certain amount of time. And when you pick a cinematographer, how many reels do you have to look at? And boy, in a way, be respectful of the time people are going to put into, if you even get a chance to be heard. So make sure you're doing something that you actually believe is fantastic.
Right. And I look at it as, remember, it's the ultimate interview of not being in the room. Right.
Yeah.
So it is the only thing we have sometimes is your bio, your credits and your music. And you have to tell a story with all those things. And that's where you have to figure out your authentic voice to stand out, whatever that is for you. And believe, like, I think we can all agree that it does stand out. And that's a feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just look, we've stumbled onto other clues. You can get across who you are from your bio. How does it read? The same words put together differently paint a picture of who you are very differently. The way you name your tracks are more clues as to who you are. If you have a website, if I go to it, does it make any impression and have any personality? You know, it's like everything you put out in the world is an opportunity to create a story about you. And is the story a compelling one, or is it an interchangeable one? And if it's interchangeable, boy, start working on whatever it takes to not be interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
And Aaron, can you come back and join us?
Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm curious, you consume large quantities of music.
I do.
What do you think the world needs now, music-wise?
In general?
Let's limit it to film and TV.
Well, I mean, there's so much television going on right now. There's so many different kinds of programs. I think this is an opportunity for people to really find their voice and apply it to some really interesting projects. I think there's more work than ever for composers.
And more opportunities for a more diverse group of people.
Exactly.
Without a long pedigree of credits. The doors are now much more open, and there's an outreach for new people.
Absolutely.
Especially with different backgrounds.
That's right.
And so seize that. I mean, that's another thing. If you're getting in the door because people want new voices and new histories and new backgrounds, then don't turn in music that just sounds like it's from a music library. Be bold within the context of, you said you wanted to hear someone different. here I am.
Exactly. Exactly. There's so many projects that are off the wall. I think a lot of the streaming services are taking chances on projects that maybe the main networks won't do. You know, fewer cooks in the kitchen in some way helps.
So I hope this was helpful. And I'm sorry, I know people wrote music and didn't get a chance to have it heard, but I hope you get just as much out of listening to other people and hearing the comments of the people who are actually in the trenches listening to music. So thank you, everybody. Tracy, Chris, Aaron, and Guy in Nashville. We will wait until 100 years later when there's another 2022. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Mhm.